Hello and welcome to Act 1, Scene 3 of Romeo and Juliet. Now, obviously, we have skipped over Act 1, Scene 2, so a little synopsis here, which we'll have in the assignment on Canvas as well. In Act 1, Scene 2, we begin to discover something about Juliet. Count Paris arrives to talk with Lord Capulet, who is Juliet's father, and he's there for a very specific reason. He is wanting to marry Capulet's daughter, Juliet. A couple things about that. They have actually never met. At this time, this is what is known as an arranged marriage. Very different culturally from where we are. Arranged marriages were set up between parents or people who wanted to marry into a family. The father had to give approval for that, and he would also have to provide a dowry, which is a set of money, goods, lands, to the husband. And really, the women did not have a chance to make a decision about that. Now, with Count Paris, he was roughly going to be in his 20s. Typically, he's cast early to the mid-20s, 20 to 25, and he's asking for Juliet's hand. Here's probably the thing that's very different from our time period. Back then, Juliet is only 13 in this play. So she is very young, and yet she would be married. A lot of the marriage age back then was much younger due to the fact that people did not live as long as they do now. And if you were going to have a family, you had to start pretty quickly because by your 30s or 40s, you might be dead. So they work out a deal on that. Lord Capulet is not immediately wanting Juliet to be married. In fact, he tries to get Count Paris to wait until she's 15, and then he's more than willing to do it at that point. But he presses him and decides to do that. So as we open up Romeo and Juliet Act 1, Scene 3, which is where we are right here, this is going to be, notice the folks who are working here, Lady Capulet, the nurse, Juliet, and a first serving man. So it's basically a servant in the household there. When we come in, Lady Capulet, Capulet's wife here, and the nurse are talking. And then essentially we find out something about the relationship between Lady Capulet, Juliet, and the nurse. So they're trying to find her here in these lines. And the nurse is basically saying, hey, I told her to get in here. She's calling for her over and over. They can't quite find her. And Juliet does come in. So they begin to talk here, Juliet and the nurse. Are basically saying, hey, who's here? Your mom wants to talk to you. And the nurse basically says, nurse, give leave a while. We must talk in secret. So she sends her away. And then she immediately says, nurse, come back again. So that reveals something, and I'll let you think through a little bit about what that says about the relationship between Lady Capulet and Juliet. If she's basically saying, hey, we've got to talk in secret. Oh, wait a minute, nurse, come right back here. So she's beginning to talk about the age of Juliet here. The nurse down here is saying, I can tell how old she is up to an hour. Lady Capulet says she's not 14 right now. And the nurse says, I'll lay 14 of my teeth. And this is actually a joke here. I'll lay 14 of my teeth, and yet to my teen be it spoken, I have but 4. So that's what's saying. There's a little joke in here. The nurse only has 4 teeth. And so they begin to talk a little bit about her past here, how old she was. The nurse is recounting several stories here as we begin to move down. She's talking about a childhood event where Juliet fell down, and she said something very funny that was actually kind of inappropriate. And the nurse begins to make fun of her, continues to laugh. And Lady Capulet begins to get angry a little bit here and says, hold your peace, quit laughing. And the nurse just keeps laughing. And again, Juliet's like, hey, will you stop? And so the nurse does finally stop here. And we find out a little bit about, this is not just a nurse that takes care of her in terms of her health. She's what we call a wet nurse. So that means that she actually nursed Juliet, fed her, without going into details there, when she was a child. So they have a very close relationship, the nurse and Juliet do. All right. As we move down here to line 64, Lady Capulet basically starts to talk about the fact that, hey, you've been betrothed. You're going to be married to someone. And the question that you're going to write today is about this section right here, starting around 64. And this is the heart of the question. What are the attitudes of Lady Capulet and Juliet about marriage? And it's kind of revealed in here. You can sort of see Lady Capulet has a very different opinion about marriage than Juliet does. So I want you to analyze through, especially this section as you read through this, to answer that opening question on this one. So Lady Capulet begins to talk about who she's going to be married with, what he looks like. The nurse makes another inappropriate comment. She's very inappropriate here. And then Juliet talks a little bit more about what her opinion is about the marriage. And finally, to sort of break all of this up, a serving man comes in. And earlier in scene 2, Act 1, scene 2, it's revealed that Lord Capulet is giving a big party at his place. One of the things I didn't mention is that Rosaline is a relative of Lady Capulet, or Lord Capulet, and she's going to be there. So Romeo can go and see Rosaline, this girl that's rejected him, that he's in love with. But the problem is it's a Capulet household. He's a Montague, and all Montagues are banned. So the serving man comes in here to break up this conversation between the nurse, Lady Capulet, and Juliet by saying, hey, the guests are here for the party. Supper served up. You called. Come on in. Everything's ready to go. So he exits, and Lady Capulet says Count Paris stays here, and the nurse gives her a final piece of advice. Go, girl, seek happy nights to happy days. So quick write is down here at the bottom that you're going to be doing after reading this scene, and then we're going to be viewing it and discussing it in class. What does Juliet's interaction with her mother reveal about her attitude towards marriage, and how does that compare to her mom's? I want you to offer at least 2 pieces of text-based evidence to support your answer from up here, and I kind of gave you a hint where it was up here in this section around number 64. If you've got questions, let me know, and go ahead and proceed on this. If you are doing the honors track, there will be a discussion project to do after everyone from honors track has finished this assignment. Message me on Canvas if you need